Friday morning, can't control it. Fired up and counting every minute. Hands are shaking, eyes are burning. The time has come, yeah, this is not a warning. The week was just so long, we had to let it go. Our problems disappeared, we're not tied up anymore. The weekend is here. Sunday calls, we are sick and tired of it. Up and down, can you feel it? Up and down.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Johansson Show. It's Kurt. Today, got a very special guest. He was voted the 2020 Bodyslam Pro Wrestling Wrestler of the Year. He's had some big waves in Bodyslam. Everybody's looking forward to his 2021 Emeritus. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you, man, and thank you for that grand introduction. Even if it's like, I'll take it. I'll take it. Even if I can think of other guys who might be better, but I'll take it.
The people voted. The people voted you to be the number one guy, and I think as we get into this as well, from just the research and the things that I've seen from watching Bodyslam, you are a key focus of that product. And with the 2021, with what's going on with yourself and Peter Olisander, which we'll get into, it means it's going to be a very exciting year for you, to say the least.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I'm looking forward to it, especially if it changes from where it is right now with this whole lockdown thing, because we were kind of in a good stride there at the end of the year. It was like, we can run shows again. And then it was like, well, now from January, we're shut down again. So hopefully that changes soon and we can start coming back into things.
Yeah, it's been the same here. We're on like another national lockdown, where it's like the first one we had last year. So it's crazy. I'm just fed up of it. I want it to be over with. So I want to go watch some wrestling. Like I can't imagine what it's been like for
Wear
a
your
lot
masks.
Pardon?
Wear your masks, everyone. Make sure you do all the social distancing. Wear your masks so we can start doing wrestling again.
Exactly. And unlike Emeritus's mask, make sure it covers your mouth. Otherwise, it just won't work.
This doesn't matter. That's just for show, and you get to see my natural skin color, which is very.
See, if everybody buys, you should do some COVID merch. Make that mask. Make sure they've got a little face mask at the front. It'll be great.
I'm sure that would actually work. Or maybe I should just start wearing a mask underneath this mask. But then I could breathe, so I might have some issues. But it might work.
I want you to do. You need to do a promo video for Twitter of everybody should wear your masks and then oops, 1 minute, and then just put your little one underneath.
A little yellow one, yeah. Like, come on, guys. This is what it is.
So, like, how did you get started then? Because from, again, different research, and you clarified before we recorded, you was doing some training in America. So what was your first, like, involvement in professional wrestling?
Well, basically, I'm so old that I remember AOL AIM. And a lot of indie wrestlers, like when I was a child / teenager, a lot of indie wrestlers, because I was watching, like, I had a lot of Smart Mark videotapes. Me and my brother had videotapes. So I watched all kinds of IWA Mid-South and CCW and all kinds of stuff. So I saw indie wrestlers, looked them up on the internet, and some of them had AOL AIMs that you could add so you could talk to them. And I'm sure I annoyed a lot of indie wrestlers. I'm very sorry for that. But a few of them also actually talked to me and actually answered some questions when I had any. And I started talking to like a couple of guys. Like Chris Hero was really nice to me, talked to me. And a guy called American Kickboxer, who I had seen work as Issy High and JCW, ICP's promotion and everything. And he started talking to me and actually trying to like teach me some psychology-based stuff already because I seemed so interested in it. And then he offered that I should go to train with him as soon as I finished what was the equivalent of high school, basically.
Yeah.
So the week after I finished high school, as I guess you could call it, I flew to Detroit and lived on his couch for 6 months while I went to train with him. Him and Truth Martini, who has the house. Yeah. So I started training there, and it's a long time ago already. I'm old.
Like, what year was that, if you don't mind me asking then?
That was in late 2008. I went there. And then I lived on his couch, and I was part of the class, and we trained Monday through Thursday. Because again, that was the whole thing, was like, I knew there was a bit of a scene in Denmark at that point. like to some degree, I was a fan. I've been to some shows. But when I showed him and some of the other guys like footage of it, they were like, "Don't go training there. Wait and come here. I want to unteach you stuff," because the Danish team was very much like self-taught at that point.
Yeah.
So he was like, "Please just come here and I'll teach you the right way."
Like, what was your family's thoughts on that then? Like, your family and friends, you're just like, hey, I'm gonna go live on some guy's couch in Detroit for 6 months.
Well, I think my parents were a little bit worried, but at the same time, I think they were kind of like, he's been talking about this for so long, and it's what he wants to do. So I think they were just like very, very careful and very cautious, but at the same time, like he's gonna do it. If it's gonna be a mistake, he's gonna learn from it. But
Yeah.
it was not a mistake, unless you consider getting involved in wrestling a mistake. But I don't think it was a mistake.
I can imagine. Like, I've spoken to so many different people from around the world now. I think I'm over 20 countries last year, and a lot of them either talk about wanting to leave where they're based. So especially in like the Southeast Asia scene, a lot of them are wanting to leave to go to either America or come to the UK. And some are quite daunted by that because obviously it's a big thing. So you're essentially fresh out of high school. You're going to live on some guy's couch you've only spoke to on AOL. Like, what was going through your mind with that experience? Because one, the pressure of trying to pursue professional wrestling, anyways, when you've got such passion about it, but the circumstances about it where you don't have your own space. You're again on this what was a stranger's couch. What was that whole experience like, and how long did it take for you to start feeling comfortable in Detroit?
I mean, it was the first few days I was regretting it. I was like, what am I doing here? This is the most insane thing. We went from like he picked me up at the airport and we
Yeah.
drove straight to the wrestling school. So I came right off an 18-hour flight and we started and I was just like, I've never done this before. I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. It's a little bit weird already right off the bat that was the first thing, but I think he used it sort of as a motivator for the other guys as well, because I was doing all this stuff, and if they were kind of like dragging ass a bit, he would be like, "This guy just came off an 18-hour flight, so you guys can also do it." But I would say for the first week, I was kind of a little iffy,
Yeah.
but you get like at that point also in your life when you're like 18, 19, you can acclimate really quickly to different circumstances, I think. So I think if I did it now, it would be way more difficult for me than it was back then because
Yeah.
you just kind of go with the flow. And it was like, okay, I'm leaving home. I live with my parents. Now I'm just living with this guy. So I was kind of used to the whole not face. And then, of course, the whole thing about, oh, I'm training with wrestlers and I'm meeting guys that I've seen on all these Smart Mark videotapes. So I was like starstruck even by the most
Yeah.
like where they don't believe that you've ever heard of them. Like there were guys where I would say, no, I know who you are, and they wouldn't believe that some dude from Denmark knew who they were. But back then, it's just different than it is now because the internet was smaller.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, the trade made that I was kind of starstruck and would tell my brother like, "Oh, I met Jimmy Jacobs at this show."
That's
It was a
crazy.
weird time, but I think a lot of the feelings at that time was very much just in awe of the whole situation. I think looking back on it, I wasn't really like aware of too much of what was going on. I think that whole period is kind of a blur
Yeah.
besides the wrestling trade because it went by so quickly to me. Even though it felt like a long time, it still went by so quickly.
Yeah, I can imagine. Like, that's crazy just to be, again, at that young age going out there. You mentioned Jimmy Jacobs. Who else did you bump into? Like, who else was you training with? Anybody else other than the American kickboxer and Truth?
Well, it was the school was in. I think nowadays they have a different place, but
Yeah.
back when I was training, the House of Truth was basically you went into like the worst part of Detroit, and there was a like broken down basketball gym, and the ring was set up at the back of that place. So and there was no heating and no air conditioning. So when it was summer, it was insanely hot. When it was winter, like a skating ring, ice skating ring, and it was still like there were guys coming in where you would be like, oh, that's Eddie Venom, who's like a local guy, or the Jimmy Jacobs coming in, or Motor City Machine Guns, or and one of the guys in my class who's probably like the the most well-known guy from my class. Juice Robinson was in my class, and then you also have like guys like more local guys who are still wrestling, who are still really good, like a guy named Sweet Watts. There was a guy named Will who was like my go-to guy, because usually you find when you go to wrestling school, you always find like one guy who's sure, like we do spots together, we kind of trust each other extra much. There was that guy that I really bonded with, and yeah, there were just guys dropping in randomly, like Zach Gowen, Jimmy Jacobs, like random guys just dropping by if they were in the area to wrestle. They'd come in for a day just to take a couple bumps, tell us a few things like that. So yeah, that happened like all the time.
I can imagine that was quite surreal. So how come it only lasted like 6 months? What prompted you to come essentially back home?
Well, I had a work visa. We didn't have a work visa. I had like a tourist visa, which allows you to be in the US for 6 months or so. So I was basically just like, okay, I'll buy a plane ticket for that day and a plane ticket for this day right off the bat. So I knew exactly what time I was going to be coming back.
Yeah.
And the main reason I also did that right off the bat was because I didn't want to have it to be open-ended to where I knew I would have to buy a plane ticket, because then I figured I might quit if I still have yet to decide when I'm going home. I would be like, this is not for me. I'll just buy one next week. But since I already paid for it, and it was like, well, I'm here for 6 months, like I didn't feel like I had the same easy way out of quitting. So I think that also sort of helped push me to just stick with it, even if it sucked sometimes. So that was kind of the reason why.
Yeah. No, I can't even imagine. I say I can't even imagine doing something like that. I ended up going to Africa like a couple of years ago, living with a Tanzanian family that couldn't speak English. So I had to learn Swahili. So I get the like you just sat there like I don't know what to say, especially.
Communicate.
What was that?
That might
Sorry.
be worse, because you couldn't even communicate. Like I could at least just talk to them. So it was like, I think yours is pretty sure.
My first phrase that I learned was, "My name's Kurt. I can't speak Swahili, but do you speak English?"
That is useful, and especially if they actually then could speak English. Otherwise, it's kind of useless, because then it's like, now they know they can't communicate with you.
Yeah, they just used to laugh. So I had to learn quickly. So you mentioned like the Danish scene, obviously back then wasn't what it is today, and from all the different interviews I've done, everybody spoke about the different politics back then. What was it like for you then? You've been away 6 months training in America with all these top stars, like you said, MCMG, Juice Robinson, Truth, Jimmy Jacobs, and then you come back and the wrestling scene in Denmark. What was that like? How was you received, first of all? Like, because instead of thinking I'll train with you, you're like, nah, I can't train there. It's not good enough. I'm going to America.
I mean, I didn't really like. I knew some of the guys back then, but that was more like as a fan / friendly way. I didn't really have like an in with them, so they were a little iffy, because again, I think that's a thing with you, when at least that's what I've noticed, is that if people are self-taught and they've been doing it for a long time that way, it's hard for them when they realize that there are certain things that are very basic, and that's what everyone else is doing, and that's not what they've been doing. They kind of get and I can understand why, but they get an attitude of, we've been doing it this way, this is better, and you should not come here and do it differently than what we do and tell us that it's wrong. And of course, I didn't really do that much because I was so young still, but
Yeah.
I could tell like basic things, like, you know, like they do headlocks on the wrong side of people, and it's not because they're Mexican luchadors doing it on the right side. They were just things where it's like, this is such basic first day of wrestling school stuff that was being done wrong, or at least being done in a weird way, and guys being way too stiff on you because that's just how they'd seen it being done without knowing how it was actually made to look that way.
Yeah.
So there were a lot of things like that where I tried to sort of like nudge people in the right direction, but it was really hard in the beginning because I was still like considered just a basic rookie. And that's not like I was a technical marvel or anything like that. It was just that some of the basic stuff it's hard when you come in with information that they didn't necessarily appreciate.
Yeah. Nah, can imagine. So, how long was it until you made your debut then?
Well, I wrestled in the U.S. for a while because
Yeah.
because there were the four training days a week, and then usually Friday, Saturday we go to a show just to set up the ring, just to hang out, just meet people, just be around it. Maybe go to a seminar, maybe be a referee if they needed referees.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of that going on. Like we'd go from either Detroit or Indiana, Kentucky, like all that whole area, like the Midwest.
Yeah.
Um, we just drive around doing that Friday, Saturday usually. Then Sunday was the one day we didn't do anything, and then right back to training Monday. So I was doing a couple of shows over there already 3 months in, I think, just borrowing gear from other people who had extra gear. So I think I made my debut sometime in a bar. It was against a guy named Rivera, who was like a big, chunky dude who I think 4 minute match, and I just got squashed completely. That was like I think my first match. I'm pretty sure that was my first one. But I got wrestled a whole bunch in the U.S., like just random indie shows. We'd
Yeah.
go to HW or something like that, just driving around, doing some seminar stuff, and then being on the show if there was a spot open. So a lot of that going on.
Is there any match that stands out from your time out there that you think I was proud of that one, or was there mostly you getting squashed by big chunky guys called Rivera?
It was a lot of that, but there was also just looking back on it. I can't really watch it in the sense that I could back then, because back then I'd be super proud. Just, oh, I'm wrestling! Like I can't believe I'm wrestling. But thinking back to it, I'd be like, I'm so awful at everything. terrible, terrible timing, terrible speed, terrible execution. So it's like I can't really look back on it, but I look back on it fondly in the sense that I was just really happy that I was wrestling, and it was
Yeah.
just incredible to meet all these people and be on the show with them and get some advice from them. Even if looking back, it was like, yeah, I was clearly greener than grass.
How did you compare to when you came back to Denmark then? And what was that transition like, I guess? Because it's different way of wrestling, it's different crowds, potentially different show and match structure. So how did you adapt, especially being so young and still, from what you say, quite green?
I'd say I feel like I grew pretty quickly from it because suddenly and it's not because I knew a lot, but again, I knew more than a lot of people suddenly rather than in the US where I was like, I'm just shutting up. I don't know a damn thing. I'll
Yeah.
just listen to whatever you're saying. And then when I got there, I still had the same attitude, but it's just and then thankfully I would say the Danish scene started to grow pretty quickly once I got back. Like they started bringing in more German guys. Like
Yeah.
I remember pretty quickly I'd wrestle a guy named Leon van Gasteren, who's a German guy slash Dutch
Yeah.
gimmick at least, and he was really good. And I learned a lot from him and other guys from Germany that would come in like Michael Knight, Damak, Axel Dieter Jr. or Marcel Bartel.
Yeah.
Did some tag team for a while. And it's like I felt like that was really good because that was also some pretty young guys, but they still had way more experience than I did.
Yeah.
And I think they sort of gave me a little bit more credit than some of the other guys because when they got in the ring with me, they could tell like, okay, you kind of know the basics,
Yeah.
so I can tell you these extra things and you will actually get it. So I felt like there was a bit of a bond with them, even though I didn't know them because I was just a Danish guy from the Danish scene that they just travel up to. But I felt that pretty quickly, and I was very happy that I got to work with a lot of those guys. So I was very happy in the beginning that I wasn't just the Danish guys wrestling the Danish guys. It's at that point I felt like that could be a struggle sometimes. At
Yeah.
that point,
Was that with DPW?
yes,
Yeah.
yes. No,
So
EW slash.
yeah. So when did the whole Emeritus character come about? Like, for somebody that's never seen Emeritus before, like, describe your gimmick, describe your character, and how did you come up with it? Because it is a very unique look. So whenever you're on a show, you're gonna stand out, like with the mask, the face paint, the name itself. Like, so how did it all come to be?
Well, the main reason is I'll quote Raven on this one when he was asked why he wears wrist tape. I remember this quote well because it looks cool. But But basically, it was like I wrestled maskless for like 4 years, 5 years.
Yeah.
So and then once we started something else just mainly to train. We got another ring called wrestling.dk. It was basically just because we had that internet site. So
Yeah.
we just called it DK. And it was more training than it was shows. It was like smaller trainee shows, but I felt like I grew a lot there as well, just because I was suddenly training people at that point. When we got that ring, I was one of the main teachers. I feel like I got to really improve my own basic skills because I suddenly had to teach them instead of just doing them because that's what I'd been taught. So I was very young to be teaching people at that point. Like I was like 3 or 4 years in,
Yeah.
and it's not that I'm the most competent man in the world. It's just that was the hand it was dealt. Like the Danish scene was dealt the hand that there aren't a lot of professionally trained wrestlers at that point. So I sort of became the guy who would teach people at that point. So I feel like I grew a lot in that, but I was still just wrestling randomly at shows and just being maskless guy. So it wasn't actually till Bodyslam started in 2015 when it was kind of like we need a mask gimmick. So I was like, well, if you need a mask gimmick, I guess I could do something with that. So it kind of grew out of that thing, and I'd done like a spot show at a festival called Copenhagen, which
Okay.
is like a metal festival. And I think I sort of had a mixture there because I didn't wear the mask still. But I came out that show to Year Zero by Ghost, and then Ghost played at that show. And from what I've been told, at least a couple of the band members, I don't think the main guy, but a couple of band members were there for the wrestling show and saw me. I've been told since then. So I kind of felt like that was where I got the idea, where I
Yeah.
was like, oh, that's kind of cool. And I used their entrance music. So I was kind of like, yeah, that's kind of cool. And they got the mask gimmick, but it's still kind of like tongue in cheek, kind of funny in a way. Um, and I think it's just that it started with that and then it's grown from there. Like in the beginning, it was very much just like, I'm a mask gimmick, I'm the Great Muda or whatever.
Yeah.
Whereas to now, I think I see it more as just a face, kind of like with Sting or something like that. Not that I'm Sting, but where it's like it's the look, then it's the mystique of the look rather
Yeah.
than the character having to be an actual monster in
Yeah.
that sense.
No, definitely. Where did the name come from?
That's basically just straight up stealing from Ghost, because they had now they got the Cardinals and everything going on, but back then the main lead singer gimmick was Papa Emeritus.
Okay.
But then I was like, Emeritus sounds cool alone, and it sounds kind of like if you're thinking Sting or something
Yeah.
like that. It's a name that doesn't mean a lot, but it still has sort of a ring to it, and you don't need much more than that. So
Yeah.
I just straight up stole that.
So going back to like you training and stuff, we've seen the rise of the Danish wrestling scene over the past couple of years, and I think a lot of it does have to go down to Bodyslam, the way they do the marketing and the production. Everything looks professional and clean, and from the posters to the actual show to video packages. And but you mentioned you was doing a lot of the training, so who was it that you was training at the time? Any of them on the Bodyslam shows now?
I mean, yeah, pretty much a lot of the younger guys, because we basically moved on from that and just started the OVW Al Snow Wrestling Academy sort of thing, grew out of that, which was just sort of a branding opportunity. So we were like, okay, we'll join part of this. We got new training facilities. We got a place in Aarhus, which is like the second biggest city in Denmark. So it got a little bit easier for people to get there and to train regularly. So now we actually can well, not right now because we're in lockdown, but usually we can just train like once a week or twice a week. So that's been a big help, even if it's not optimal to train once a week or twice a week, but it is what it is. So I've been training guys there for a while, and like if you like the Easy Lovers, basically I trained the Easy Lovers. Peter, Olisander, like a lot of the younger guys basically came out of that. Yeah. So I'd say I've been thrust into the idea of being a trainer, and I really like it actually. Like I really enjoy seeing like a guy like Eric Sable, who came from like, he trained a little bit back in the day and was kind of like, I'll just be a fan, and then he started training again, and then actually like growing into this character and actually really getting good at like different aspects, like whether it's promos or selling or all this kind of stuff. So it's like I really appreciate just seeing them do well on shows as well.
Yeah, I just like how in the intro you're like, I'll take it, but I don't think it's right when I give you such a introduction with being the 2020 Wrestler of the Year, and then you just start talking about you're partly responsible for Easy Lovers, for Peter Olisander, so you need to give yourself more credit. You're like the father of Bodyslam.
I guess in some way, but it's also their work. And it's like it's so easy in Danish wrestling, especially to quit because you don't have that easy to reach goal. Like I can understand in the UK or the US where you get a lot of guys in who get stars in their eyes because they see it's a short path, they think, even if it isn't. Whereas here it's very easy for people to come in and quit because they don't see that easy fix or that easy way to anything. So I'd also say it's very much a credit to them for sticking with it and being able to, like, they want it bad enough that they want to help build the Danish scene, because I think that's equally, if not more important than the more individualistic goal of saying, I want to make it to AEW or WWE. I think I like the idea of building the Danish scene up much more than that, where it's like, I want so many good Danish wrestlers that the Danish scene is just able to self-sustain, and where people will come from the outside and look at it and say, wow, this is an actual thing. Like, this is like British wrestling or the American indie scene on a smaller scale. That's kind of like what I want, rather than just guys wanting to leave as quickly as possible.
So how do you feel with the obviously with Peter Olisander, you've helped train him, and for the past 3 years now since he debuted in 2016, following 2017, you two have been working so closely together. So how does that feel, the fact you've been able to work with one of your students, although things have flipped upside down and you might take his championship from him? Like, what does it feel like to be working so closely and be part of him becoming the Bodyslam champion?
I'd say it was like right off the bat with him, like he trained for a little while and he was so quick at improving, because I think he told me before that he's done some like amateur MMA and everything before wrestling. So he had like a good base for a lot of wrestling stuff, and he was just like a natural at picking things up. So it wasn't that he hadn't even been training that long before he was on shows. And he's also just always had the attitude of wanting to do the best with what he's given. So if it was like, okay, I'm this preacher gimmick guy, then I'll try to put my own twist on it. So a lot of that character is not something that's been put on him. That is definitely his own work of coming up with ideas, coming up with his character, coming up with his look. So I'd say it's a lot of his own work, and I'm just really happy that he's been able to get there without being like one of the old guard of Danish wrestling, where it's like, this is so new and so fresh, and he's already been to the top basically, and is only improving still. And that's the thing, like, he's still improving. Like, from show to show I see him and I'm like, he's better now than he was even like 6 months ago. So I think that I get to be part of that as well, and come up, he comes up with, and like all this studying he does, just the promos, like match psychology, all that stuff. So like I'm really proud of him.
Yeah. So whilst we're on the topic of Peter Olisander, then I mentioned again 2020 Wrestler of the Year, but he was also part of the Moment of the Year, where it was yourself, Peter Olisander, and Michael Finn wrestling at the wXw Now showcase for the Carat Gold weekend. What was that experience like for you? Because when we talk about different wrestling scenes, that Carat Gold weekend's one of the big prestigious tournaments in wrestling.
I mean, that was a really big moment for us, just because and again, it comes back to the idea of growing the Danish scene to the point where we're worth actually bringing in for something like that, where we don't embarrass ourselves. And I feel like that those three guys, like myself and Peter and Michael, where it was like, I felt like we could do that, and it wasn't going to be a big issue, and it didn't seem like the crowd thought either. And also just to wXw for allowing us, because again, it's their weekend, it's their show. They can literally do whatever they want, and they still choose to highlight other European indie promotions. So I was like, that's really cool of them, and to give us that platform on their time and their money. So like, it was a really big moment just because it's like going to Oberhausen, having been to a wXw events before just as a fan, that suddenly it's like now we can be part of this, and it's not just because they have to, they want to. They want to grow the scene as well. And of course, it's unfortunate that right after the whole pandemic literally hit that weekend, basically, like right after that Sunday, it was like hard to get to Italy, hard to get to France. Because I feel like that was a lot of momentum carrying all over from that, both for us, but also wXw and like future collaborations. So it was a shame, but at the same time, I'm very happy and fortunate that at least the last moment before that, I got to do that and be part of something that special.
Yeah. Is it something you're hoping to do more of, whether it's the Now Showcase or potentially any other wXw show?
Sure, I love that. I love that. I especially I think during this whole lockdown period, I think I really felt like as much as I want to grow the Danish scene, I'd also love to just get out there and represent it and like make sure that people come from the Danish wrestling scene, and we can wrestle in Germany, we can wrestle in Sweden, we can wrestle in the UK. And I think that would also be really cool. And I think it was like bound to happen at some point. And like I know there were some plans also for potentially like a Danish collaboration show with wXw that never went anywhere because again the pandemic hit.
Yeah.
But I hope some of that stuff gets picked up again once the whole pandemic thing is over and we can start traveling more freely. I'd love to see something along those lines where like intermingling with like the best of wXw and the best of Bodyslam and things like that. I love for that to happen.
That'd be great. Is there anybody in particular that if wXw were to come to Denmark that you want to get in the ring with from that roster?
There's a lot of really good guys. Like I'd say Norman Harras, Lucky. Well, now he's Metean, but Lucky Kid when he was here, he's awesome. The rotation's also really good. There's so many guys. Like I feel like the wXw roster has also shown that during the pandemic. I feel like where they have been able to run shows with basically just their crew, like their skeleton crew of local talent, and like a few guys who could come in like Cara Noir. But they really also picked up the ball and just ran with it. I feel like because they did the whole Catch Grand Prix like that, and it was still really good. So I think that also really shows like what their scene is like, how good those guys are at this point. So like, I'd just be happy to work with any of the wXw guys, just because their general level is so high.
Yeah, and to be fair, like mentioning the homegrown talent, I think that's something Bodyslam does need props for, and as it turns out, that you need props for training a lot of them, because despite not being able to bring in some of the like local international guys, for example, match of the year, again, yourself with Peter Olisander against Chuck Mambo and who was Adam? Yeah, TJ. How was that like? TK Cooper.
That was also a great match. But again, that was actually kind of weird because when we were going over it and like the match was through, I felt like we did a good job. I felt the match was good, but I didn't feel like my performance was that strong in it. But again, everybody else was very happy with the match afterwards. So it was like, I think sometimes it can be hard to judge yourself. But like again, those two guys were great to work with. Like they were super easy. They wanted to do everything that we wanted to do, and their stuff was super easy. So it was just fun because there was no issues at all, and they're just super nice guys and amazing in the ring. So it was like as easy as it gets, and then to have that kind of crowd reaction from it being that easy to get through and with such good guys. That what more can you ask for in wrestling?
No, definitely. So you mentioned like you wanting to represent Denmark, going to Sweden, which I think Svensk Wrestling and Stockholm Wrestling, you've been across to those, and you came to England for Chikara for the King of Trios. What were those like different experiences like for you?
Well, I'd say the Swedish wrestling thing. Like I've been to the three different. Like there's three main. Like there are a few other. There's also Freedom Pro, Halmstad Wrestling. But I've been to Svensk Wrestling Syd and GBG Wrestling, which is in Gothenburg, and then Stockholm Wrestling. And while they're a little different, I'd still say, since they also have like a main roster of people, and I'd say that's the Swedish scene is also one where it's like the last few years it has gotten so much better
Yeah.
because the guys that have been there for a while are getting really good, and they're the ones teaching the newer generation. So it's like the looks are better, the ring work is better, the overall presentation is better. So it's actually really fun to go to all those promotions because you feel in good hands and you feel like this is like a level that's comparable to what I feel like we have in Bodyslam. And that's all I want. I want the Scandinavian scene to be to the point where no matter where you go, you know the guys are good and that there's intermingling where it's like, okay, Steinbold and Harley, they can wrestle everywhere. Me, Michael Finn, whoever can wrestle in their promotion. So it becomes this sort of intermingling, and the Scandinavian scene is so small that I feel like it's important that the whole scene has like an equal standpoint where everybody wants the best for each other.
Yeah.
Because that's the only way it's going to grow. Because again, we can run shows like you mentioned with just Danish talent, but it is limited and it is limiting when you can't bring in other guys. So of course it's better when you get some influences from outside, whether that be Sweden or the UK or Germany or anything like that.
Yeah, hopefully, like you mentioned, you can start working together. It's been a common theme when I spoke with Carlos Zamora, or even the interview with Hangman with Copenhagen Championship Wrestling. They both said they'd love like a Danish super show where all three companies just get together, sort out either one show or maybe multiple shows in each of your different regions, and then potentially even including the Swedish guys. I mentioned it with Alisink and Max of Man, where it could be one where you all do a show in Stockholm, and then you'll go to Gothenburg, and then you'll go to Copenhagen. What would your thoughts be like that if the politics could get put aside and you can do these Danish super shows where they might stream on wXw's service or one of the indie services that Bodyslam are on, just to promote how good Scandinavian is?
Now I'm going to come with a controversial statement. I'm going to shoot, brother. I feel like the Danish Super Show would not make a lot of sense since I feel like the Danish Super Shows is every Bodyslam show, basically because there are guys from DPW on the shows and there are guys from CCW on the shows. So I just feel like it's like that is already happening.
Yeah.
But I do feel like we definitely do something where the Swedish, the Finnish, the Norwegian, like try to bring all that together, because I think a connected show where it's like nations together and bringing Scandinavian wrestling together, I think that has some potential, because I feel like there are some guys where it's like they might not get brought in everywhere just because they're so local to their place where they should be, because like there are really good guys in Gothenburg, there are really really good guys in Finland and girls in Finland and girls in Sweden. Again, like there are very few Danish wrestlers, like the female wrestlers, whereas Sweden and Finland have really strong scenes.
Yeah.
So I feel like there's definitely some potential in that, because those promotions have been able to cultivate that like to a completely different level.
Yeah, hopefully, like it would be like a really good annual weekend where you could go. You can be in Sweden one day and then Norway. If you did like I don't know if there was like a bank holiday where you did the Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, where it's just 4 massive shows. I think that'd be like incredible. Like as a fan, I'd be coming over there, and like if everybody, I've just released some merch like today, so people can have a look at that for the merch stand where it is Scandinavian themed, and I've got the independent ones where it's Scandinavian and the Denmark flag, the one with the Sweden, and then there is the one that's including Finland and Norway, and so that can be the merch for the weekend. Just Scandinavian's idea.
It could be a whole festival where it's just like we have 3 shows or 4 shows all day, and it's just like this is the Swedish show, this is the Danish show, this is the Norwegian show, this is the Finnish show, and then have like a big super show at the end of it, something like that, where it's like there are some possibilities where you could bring some people together, I think, and just make a whole, like again, show off what the Scandinavian scene actually is and how different it is.
Definitely, because just from speaking to different fans here in the UK or other podcasters in the UK, because like I think the first person from the UK to start looking into the Scandinavian wrestling scene, and then I've been getting messages of people saying, "Hey, like, listen to your show. I've checked out some of the shows. I'm really enjoying it." And when I've mentioned my plans in going, they're even wanting to come on board, where they can be like, "Oh, we can just do loads of different content or make a big weekend of it just to promote it." So it's good to see that people are opening their eyes to Scandinavian wrestling, whether it is Sweden, Denmark, Finland, or Norway. Just, yeah, I want that Super Show. I think the Super Show would be a great statement from yourselves.
And again, it also just goes to show that I think that's the future of wrestling. Because again, look at what AEW is doing with the whole trying to bring other promotions in on it. And again, wXw, what they're doing, they're also bringing other promotions in to help promote them as well. Where it's not so much like we have to compete with every single one of these, because like we're not in competition with Gothenburg Wrestling.
Yeah.
We're not in competition with FCF in Finland, because again, it's a different market. But it's still, if they can build their product and we can build ours at the same time, then it's like I think that's the way it has to be in the future. If you try to be an island, I think it's way harder, because people know these other things are out there, and there's no point in trying to deny it.
Is there anybody on the Scandinavian wrestling scene that you've not been able to wrestle yet, where you're like, man, I'd want that singles match with them?
Oof, there's a few, because again, I haven't been to Finland, and I like that. And in Stockholm, there's guys like I've seen a lot of Chikara, for example, who you also interviewed.
Yeah.
I love to wrestle him. Now you're putting me on the spot, and all these guys are so good. There's some good guys in Finland, but I can't think of them. Shimika, I think is how Shimika, something like that, who used to be a mask guy.
Okay, I'm yet to look into Finland. I'm just arranging my first couple of interviews from Finnish wrestlers. I've got one from Norway to release, which I've already recorded. So hopefully I can keep setting these seeds with all the different promotions that we need this Scandinavian Super Show, and it can happen.
For sure. Espen Olsen is also really good if we're talking Norwegian guys. He's really good. But I've thankfully wrestled like a lot of the better Swedish guys, like Timmy Forrest, Steinbold, Harley, all kinds of guys from there. And Valentine is also, I'd love to wrestle Valentine, actually, who's Finnish/Swedish. And there's just I feel like the scene is strong enough now to the point where I can't even name them if you just off the cuff ask me. I think that's a good thing.
Definitely. So what was your experience like in Wolverhampton then with Chikara?
That was a big surprise that thing suddenly happened, because we were we were like Bodyslam had been around at that point a couple of years, I think.
Yeah.
And I think they were just in contact through Ophidian, because there'd been an Ophidian seminar here. That was really good, by the way.
Yeah.
So I'd say wants to get a great seminar, ask for Ophidian. But yeah, I think it was just through that they got in contact, and then contacted Quackenbush, and he was like, we need a couple extra teams from around there, because we can't just have Americans flying into the UK. Yeah. And I think they liked the idea of like having different countries represented rather than just being all UK guys. So they sort of brought us in as, and I was very happy that we got to wrestle the team that we got to wrestle the first night, because we got to wrestle Hello Wicked, who was like one of those guys that I've been seeing a lot of on Smart Mark videos when I was a kid. I was like, that's really cool that I get to wrestle Hello Wicked and take his finish and get pinned by. I was like, hell yeah. So I was like super that, and just getting to meet like a lot of the UK scene, because we hadn't really intermingled that much. That was also the first time we met like a guy like or Chris Brooks, and like they're super nice guys, and like they got an idea that we existed. So I feel like that was a good way to sort of again bringing the wrestling world together, much like I was talking about with wXw or what AEW is doing. Whereas like the more you bring the different places together and try to showcase as much as possible, I think it only helps everyone and the whole scene. So like again, it exposed us to some guys. It exposed them to us. Because again, I'm not sure we would have wanted Chuck Mambo if not for that. Because suddenly it was like, he's a really cool guy. He's really good, and he's like, why wouldn't we bring him in? And again, if the pandemic hadn't happened, who knows? I think they would have been here for a long time.
Definitely. So like, Obviously, it's great with everybody working together. Unless you're WWE, you'll just open a new promotion in that country and just call it NXT and like Asia
We
or
just
whatever. But with that being said, I know you mentioned like AEW, NXT. That's you're more happy with raising the Danish wrestling scene. But do you feel you could do that from, say, signing with NXT UK, being that first Danish wrestler
I mean,
to be signed?
probably, but it's just I don't think it's been a goal of mine. I just feel like WWE has never really been what I wanted to do. I think I've
Yeah.
been more just I want to try to build something, and I don't feel like that would be it. That would be like financial security would be the main thing from that.
Yeah.
So I'm not against it. I'm not hating on anyone who signs. I understand if that's your dream and that's what you want, and you can do a lot with it. It's just never really been a goal of mine. If anything, I'd rather just go to Mexico and wrestle for a while, or to Japan and wrestle, or in the UK or whatever. Like I
Yeah.
think that would be fun for me, and then again try to raise the Danish scene to the point where people are looking here and being like, these guys are really fucking good. So I think my goal is not so much. I think it maybe it's the socialist in me from from the Danish politics, where it's like I'd rather just everybody gets raised up.
Yeah. Do you think if somebody was to be signed, that would help the popularity of Danish wrestling grow and maybe more people in the local community be willing to check out the wrestling in general or giving it a try? Do you think that would happen? Because in one of my interviews with Mila Schmidt, she spoke about Amel getting signed, and she was the first French female to be signed. And all of a sudden, all the different news outlets have their own. Do you feel that would help?
I think it might in the short term, because again, I think in France and all these other European countries, they have the positive that WWE is already kind of a thing. Like people
Yeah,
know it from television, whatever. Whereas here, people generally don't know what it is, or some kids might see it on YouTube, but it's not on television and hasn't really been like mainstream at any point. So I think it might just be a novelty, because
yeah,
even the UFC fighters, there was even a big thing about that recently because Nicholas Dolby, who's also been on some Bodyslam shows, actually, was a UFC fighter. He was tweeting something about like even the Sportsman of the Year contest here in Denmark, where they do a big show. None of the Danish UFC fighters were even invited to it. So, and that's like a big deal. Like they're on
yeah,
actual pay per view with see it, and it's still kind of glossed over by mainstream media because it's not soccer, handball, or boxing. So I think it would get a little bit of press where they'd be like, oh, that's kind of cool. That's a neat little thing. But I don't think it would really break through anything just from someone going to NXT or NXT UK. I don't really think it would have that kind of cultural impact just because it's not really a thing here where
yeah.
people know wrestling, this big grand thing.
Okay. So when we're speaking of like body slam, then again, a big reason why the scene has been growing the way it has. What are some of your other favorite moments for body slam?
That's another tough one. I'd say probably some of like first time in Copenhagen in Copenhagen, just because that was the first time the Body Slam actually did a show in Copenhagen, like the capital. Otherwise, it's been like in Aarhus or Aalborg, which are like pretty big cities, but it's not the same as going to the main city. And it's like a main downtown out as well. And then just to hear that crowd reaction where it's like to the point where like international wrestlers have said that that was the craziest crowd I've ever heard. And that kind of is a proud moment just because these fans are as casual as you can get. These are not like these fans do not know, like they might know who Hogan is, but that's about it. And then to get that kind of reaction for local guys and international wrestlers that are, and that's also a thing I feel like Body Slam has been good with, is the international wrestlers that are not just there for the pay. They're there to actually like really impress and do a good job every time they're out there. So that also gives the crowd something to get excited for because these guys are really working hard for them. So I'd say probably the first Pumbahuset or the first Aalborg show, just because the first Aalborg show was like 500 people there, and it was at the point where it was like, this may not work out. Like the Bodyslam thing was like, nah, might just do a show or two and that's it. And then that one sold out, and it was 500 people, and that kind of snowballed from there. So I'd say probably one of those two.
Yeah. What about matches then when you're thinking back, other than obviously the tag team with TK Cooper and Chuck Mambo, who else stands out as one of those matches?
Are we talking with me in it or other people?
With yourself.
With myself. I'd say probably one of the bigger ones, also because of what was it was me and Peter again, but against Michael Finn and Chris Brooks. Mainly because what Peter also told me after that match, like later, a lot later, was that because that was like a really spotty match, like with a ton of stuff happening, and he was still more green than now, so it was like a big match for him, and he was very nervous, but then got through it and people loved it. So he was talking about like afterwards that really made him feel more comfortable in the ring afterwards, because now he's like, I can get through even that where I'm that nervous and I think everything is going to go wrong here, and then to get through it, and then not only get through it but have the crowd go crazy and everybody saying it was great. So I think that was a proud moment, just because I knew he could do it, but he didn't trust it, and then he proved that he could do it. And just because, again, Michael Finn is really great, Chris Brooks is really awesome doing his thing in Japan, but hopefully he'll come back someday if he gets tired of get it back to Bodyslam. But yeah, that was also a really awesome match for me, just for that thing alone, and also because it was really fun working with Chris Brooks. But yeah, just for the fact that Peter felt that way afterwards.
Yeah, no, definitely. So you asked the question earlier if it was a match that you was involved in then. So as a fan for yourself, when a match that you've not been involved in, what match would you say everybody needs to go check out from Bodyslam?
I'd say just because it was practically booked for that reason, I'd say go check out Lucky Kid versus Speedball Mike Bailey, because that was a really insane match, and I think they even said afterwards when they came backstage, and I think Bailey said something where it was like, I think someone said, "Oh, you guys went really long" or something, and he was like, "Yes." And with that reaction, there's no reason to apologize, and everyone was like, "Yeah, that's true." Everybody agreed. It's like, yeah, that's true. That's a good point. But yeah, that was an insane match, and I think everybody was just kind of like, yeah, let them do what they're gonna do, because they're gonna kill it, and they killed it. And again, that's like really two good guys, so it was just like really awesome to just get to witness that one live and how they put everything together, and just being like, this is gonna be insane.
Yeah.
But I'd say check that one out if you want to see like two guys that are probably gonna get signed somewhere sooner rather than later. Then check that one out.
Yeah, definitely. So, and of course, you've got Easy Loverz. You mentioned you trained them earlier. They've got the tag team of the year as well. How does that feel seeing? I know you just recently worked with the boys, but how does it feel for them to get such an honor?
I'd say it's pretty good for a lot of reasons, but again, it's also just that I think they have grown so much, and that's probably also why they've been so good together, because they've trained together, so they know each other. And it's like when they're on their own, it can be a little more like daunting in the beginning, because you're so unsure of where you're going to be or what your character is going to do or how you're going to do this or that. Whereas if you're with your buddies who you've been training with and who can spitball ideas back and forth, I feel like they've really, all of them have grown a lot in various ways, whether it be in ring or it's been character wise. So I think just the fact that they're together instead of being apart and doing their own thing, I think that's why they are getting popular. It's just because they're so wacky and they're just getting to do their own thing and just be idiots. And that's what they need to do, because it's like that's the only way they're going to learn. And it's like, just go out there, and if you think something's a good idea, just try it. And usually it seems to work with those guys. So
Definitely. So to wrap things up then, like, what are you hoping from with Bodyslam in 2021? Obviously, yourself and Peter Olisander are clearly on a collision course. You've got to be interested in that Bodyslam championship, but what do you want from Bodyslam personally, and what do you want to happen for Bodyslam as a company for the next year, for this coming year?
I'd say personally, I just like us to run shows again. Like seriously, with a full capacity. If at any point we can get to the point where we can say, okay, these shows are full capacity, both in Copenhagen, Aarhus, Aalborg, wherever we're going, it's full capacity, standing room. I'd say that would be a victory alone in 2021. So I really, really hope that'll happen. That'll be like just getting in the ring in front of that crowd again is going to be a crazy moment whenever it happens. I hope it's this year. And then, of course, I hope to be able to do something with Peter that's really special. I hope we'll get to do several matches, and I hope we'll be able to escalate them and like build a story around it, so it's not just a one-off grudge match type thing. I hope we'll be able to like go back and forth and have some hopefully relatively crazy for Danish wrestling standards matches. And then I hope that Bodyslam overall, I really hope that there's going to be more collaborations, whether that be with wXw, whether that be with Swedish wrestling, whether it be with British wrestling, whatever that can both give guys from here opportunities other places, but also open the doors for Denmark to have more international flavor. And like guys like Mambo or TK and guys like that, Lucky Kid, Johan now, just being able to introduce those guys, I think, lifts the whole scene.
Yeah, definitely. Hopefully, like again on Twitter, it's seeming more and more people catching on with Bodyslam. So hopefully, like those can happen. And again, we need that big Scandinavian show to happen. So again, thank you for coming on. Like I've said beforehand, just bear with me. I'm plugging my charger in so we don't go dead. I forgot to do it earlier.
That would be a terrible thing to the show if you just go, we're out.
Yep. Well, my screen just went dark. I was like, why has it gone darker? And then I was like, oh, crap. So luckily I had it up here. But no, like, again, thank you for coming on the show. You were one of the names that I wanted on, and that ain't just blowing smoke up your ass. It's one where, again, you.
That's
But, and thankfully, you're one of the Danish wrestlers that have Twitter. So I don't have to do the sell of why you need Twitter. But where can everybody find you on Twitter?
You can find me at, I think it's Emeritus Wrestler, at Emeritus Wrestler. I think that's right.
I'll check. But whilst I check for you, like, where else can they find you on social media?
You can find me, I think, Emeritus Pro Wrestling on Facebook, but I barely use that, so don't even bother. Or on Instagram, which I am 100% sure you can find me at Emeritus Wrestler. So go on Instagram and find me at Emeritus Wrestler. Then you'll be sure to keep following me. I play some guitar on there as well. That's my big story thing during lockdown. I just put guitar clips up.
Ah, bro. Make sure you do go follow. I'll put them in description. It is Emeritus Wrestler on Instagram, and it's Emeritus Pro Res for Twitter.
There you go. Got it. I don't know what I'm doing.
So everybody, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. It is the 2020 Bodyslam Pro Wrestler of the Year, as well as Moment of the Year, as well as Match of the Year. Just taking everything.
I'd be blushing if I wasn't wearing this.
Make sure you go follow Emeritus. Go follow Bodyslam on across social medias. Go check out their shows as well. If this is the first time checking out one of the Scandinavian interviews, go check out all the other ones that I've been doing. I've got a playlist with Scandinavian. Go over to the merch stand where I've finally released my own merchandise. You got the plain logo tee, you've got the international wrestler tees, and then you've got the different Scandinavian range that I've opened up. So go across to the merch stand. So that's been. Pardon?
Go get shirt merch.
Yeah, get Kurt merch. So Emeritus, thank you again, everybody. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening.
Friday morning.